transparent appointment, Dennis Chung's selection, and that came via the PSC. It was advertised, it was vetted, it was selected, and they have an explanation for it. We're going to go to that clip shortly so we can have your assessment of it, and then we can just get right into it.
In particular, the appointment of Mr. Dennis Chung as Chief Technical Director of the Financial Investigation Division, the FID, which has been resisted by the opposition PNP. The Jamaica Labour Party condemns as vulgar and inappropriate the action taken by the PNP in the vicinity of Hero Circle this morning in relation to the appointment of Dennis Chung as Chief Technical Director of the FID. Let's examine some facts. Dennis Chung was appointed as Chief Technical Director of the FID following a process which was coordinated by the Public Services Commission, the PSC, which involved advertisement, interviews, and selection. The PSC was established many decades ago in order to ensure independent superintendence and coordination.
How should we understand that? How does the PSC process ensures transparency, independence in public appointments, and crucially, do you believe it worked in this particular case?
As for me?
I'll put it to you first.
Right. I think we have gone a little way ahead of the game by talking about the PSC. Let's start with what happens before it gets to the PSC. So there's a vacancy.
Yeah.
Before the PSC can make a selection, there has to be an application process, correct?
Yeah.
If there's an application process, people must know what they're applying for and what the qualifications are. If I'm correct on that, then the first procedure that we must look at is what was advertised. If it was advertised that you would have to have a particular set or particular standard, and up to, let's say in this instance, up to November of 2024, the advertisement for the position indicated that there would have been and would have to be a 12-year experience in investigations, 5 of which, or a portion of which, has to be at a senior level. The challenge we have is, if you're going to change those qualifications, when was it changed?
And why?
Why was it changed? Where was it communicated that it was so changed? So that people, us, individuals, citizens, can have confidence in the process. So we start at the process of the application, and those questions are there. When you get to the PSC, we don't know what's happening behind closed doors. We don't know who the persons are who are applying. And because we do not trust the process, and public trust is low, we are going to question whether or not it was done transparently, whether or not it was done in a manner that would facilitate some kind of advantage to those who have the power to control the narrative. And so before you get to the PSC, would you appreciate that the public is asking those questions? It's not, and then when it gets to the PSC, have you heard the PSC commenting? No. What you have heard are explanations coming from a political body, the Jamaica Labour Party. Then you also have directly coming from the upper house, members from the upper house, the Senate, speaking about the issue. And by their very nature, this tells us that it is very political. It is in those circumstances that I'd like to change your question and indicate to you that what is most appropriate is not whether or not the PSC made the right selection, it's whether or not the procedure leading to the selection was correct.
So with that said, though, because we would have appreciated, or we can appreciate that in times past, there would have been directors who did not have a particular skill set in that, namely the idea of the law enforcement or the investigative background.
Could I pause there? You are familiar with the circumstances in which the person who had no law enforcement experience was there and why she actually left, and the recognition that the international standard is that persons who head such a division would have some kind of investigatory background. It is not so much having training in forensic accounting. But it is what you can bring to that particular position. So don't, and let's not do that.
Yeah.
Let's not do that. Let's not go back to what existed. Let's pretend for one moment that we are real.
Okay.
And in the real world, we have issues that are touching and concerning the FID.
Mm-hmm. What, though, are some of the inherent disadvantages now that we see? Because well, that leads to another question. But let's hear about the disadvantages that you foresee with what has happened now.
At the beginning, we are quite cognizant that the FID has been brought into the public discourse because of the investigations of the Integrity Commission.
Yeah.
And the recommendation from the Integrity Commission that we don't have the requisite skill set to complete this investigation, having gotten information from a forensic accountant. So we have sent it over to another division that, to our mind, has the skill set to do the investigations. So we all have heard about the FID.
Yeah.
Yes? Of particular concern to the public is whether or not the investigation into the Prime Minister is going to be transparent and fair. And so here is where the rubber hits the road. I will say publicly, as I have said in my press release, Dennis Chung was our former chairman of the board. That's the board of the National Integrity Action. He understands what I'm talking about when I say the perception. Having the highest regard to the work that he could possibly do. Ask yourself this, and this is the question I would ask to every Jamaican. Should Mr. Chung come back and say, I have done this work, here is the report, and these are my findings, and it vindicates the Prime Minister? How many of us will accept that report without more? Because of the circumstances that have surrounded his appointment. So, if he comes back and he says that he finds something, would we accept that too? So he's in a very difficult position.
So then the argument now is it has less to do with right and wrong. I'm just human for a minute. It's more about what the perception is. So irrespective of whether or not, based on the moment that we're currently in and what has happened before, you are saying that he's ineligible not because of qualifications. It has nothing to do with the qualifications, but it's just the circumstances surrounding how he's where he is now.
Why would you say he's illegible?
Well,
because if your argument holds, which is that there is a qualifications that have now said he doesn't need those qualifications, we can't say he's ineligible.
No, so let's look at it from the perspective that, and based on what you have said. So, in other words, he's tainted, and that's the perception that is out there now. Yeah. So, irrespective of whatever findings he would come forward with at a future time, these will be questioned.
Absolutely.
So that's pretty much what we're driving at now. So, you know, we're saying that the process didn't work or has not worked in this case, or something has changed that should not have been changed, or it should have been communicated prior to.
Well, I mean, Danielle spoke about the process leading up to his appointment. I think the elephant in the room here is the public pronouncements that Mr. Chung, that Dennis would have made pertaining to the Prime Minister's situation with the Integrity Commission. Now, those public pronouncements, I think, would create a problem of doubt and trust with the public. And for that particular reason, you know, as far as trust is concerned, as far as the public perception of the appointment is concerned, as far as the outcome of any investigation that he does, that proved to vindicate the Prime Minister, it would cause doubt. I'll draw from another analogy. If, for example, you were choosing a jury, a jury that would be adjudicating on the particular case with the Prime Minister, would Dennis Chung be a suitable juror to adjudicate on that particular case?
Yeah.
And if the answer is no, then why no? because of his public pronouncement on the Prime Minister's situation.
Yeah.
So for that particular reason, I think we have a conundrum having Dennis in the particular post. It has nothing to do with qualifications. It has nothing to do with Dennis's antecedents. He has worked other places and has done very well. But because of the optics surrounding this particular situation,
Don't look good.
it does not look good.
So Kwame, so you join both. You join the situation that has been presented in terms of how it's been advertised, how it appears that he is selected. It's, you know, predetermined, and it's predetermined because he has the air of the Prime Minister. Marry that with his public utterances and appreciate that those utterances indicated that he was providing a technical view. Yes, because he was in his capacity as an accountant, he's able to speak to bank accounts. He's able to speak to the quality of a report. Now, if you form that view already, are you going to be in a position
To be objective.
to be objective? And because this matter is of public importance, and I want to make it very clear, this is the public importance that we're talking about. And when we talk about public perception and the use of authority, that is where everything comes into play in this particular matter.
So before we get to the break, though, does this particular controversy point to a deeper crisis then in governance?
Because
I'd say yes.
it does.
Because if it is that you're going to perform a particular action, and as far as that action is concerned, it would hit trust. It would, cause public trust to be shaken. Then you should really examine your choices.
Oh, so then is it more so about one appointment, or are we witnessing the slow centralization of what we can call executive power then?
Some of us would call it evidence of an authoritarianism. And there are other examples that persons would want to be able to point at to indicate that as far as the creation and application of our Constitution is in the Westminster model, it offers too much authority to the Prime Minister. And given the level of authority that the Prime Minister has because of the very nature of the system of governance that we inherited, it makes every reason that when we speak about constitutional reform, that constitutional reform is not done for aesthetic purposes. It is done to see and answer questions such as, is there a greater public participation? How can we encourage people to participate in governance? How do we appreciate and allow people to appreciate their involvement in governance that is more than a vote?
So then should we seek to introduce then formal public hearings for major appointments to reduce, well, such as this, to reduce protest and to somehow build trust or rebuild trust?
That's a very good idea. I yield to Mr. Wignall.
I think a lot of the appointments, you would admit, they are subjective appointments. People are going to choose who they think will give them an advantage. And if allowed to, they will. And as far as our Jamaican situation is concerned, over the years, the public perception is that that is what is happening. How do we change that? Probably what you suggested about, public consultation might be a route.
I hear you burning. A penny for your thoughts.
Pennies are no longer of much value. They no longer exist in some places. You see, I do not think, with the greatest of respect, that merely having public hearings or consultations are the answer. If you look at the current situation with our job description and code of conduct situation, you were told that there were consultations.
Yeah.
If you look at constitutional reform, you were told that there were consultations. So consultations, I think, can be controlled. What we really need to do, Kwame, is to have a hard look at the sections of our governance that requires greater public participation and how we can improve public trust in those areas. And this wouldn't require, to be fair, in this instance, I don't think it requires a public hearing. What it required was communication as to why it is that you'd have changed the qualifications, communication as to why it is, who the other applicants were, and I'll tell you this, perhaps it wasn't best to have the senators themselves speak on the issue. Perhaps it wasn't best to have the Minister of Finance speak on the issue. And perhaps it's a question of timing. We are on the skirts of an election. Perhaps it would have been reasonable if you were to read the tea leaves to let some things wait until after the election so that it doesn't give the appearance that you're trying to control the narrative.
If it is that we weren't having an election,
Then,
if it is that the Prime Minister didn't find himself in this particular conundrum, there would have been no issue having Dennis Chung in the position.
Save and accept that we need to look at the qualifications and decide when we talk about having a strong investigative regime, if it was reasonable to remove the qualifications to have someone who has 12 years of experience in the investigation world.
a lot to consider. A sharp and necessary start. When we return, we take a closer look at what roles at the Bank of Jamaica, across administrations and in the private sector. But critics say that's not enough for the head of the FID. Take a look.
Organization of Jamaica that Mr. Chung is a suitable candidate for the post. In fact, the words "a great selection" were used. Well-known attorney at law and public affairs commentator Mr. Gordon Robinson is right when he opined that Dennis Chung is as qualified to be FID Chief Technical Director as anybody else. Suggestion that Mr. Chung lacks the qualification for the post lacks merit. It must be noted, I have not heard this in the media, but it must be noted that at least 5 individuals who have served either in a permanent capacity or acting the top job at the FID have not a direct law enforcement qualification. In fact, like Mr. Chung, 2 of those individuals have credentials in accounting at the level of a master's degree. One had qualification in business administration and economics. One is an attorney at law with a master's in business administration, and the other had qualifications in ICT.
Do we need law enforcement experience for this particular post, or could you say that financial and administrative skills, meet the brief?
Do you get more vitamin C from an orange than you get from a lime?
Depends on the size.
Depends on the size. Also depends on the flavor you want, right? Oranges are sweeter than limes, but we still get vitamin C, right? The question is, which is what is suitable for what moment? I am at that juncture where I would respond to the position which says he is qualified.
But
I would not use a but. I would say at this particular moment in time, having regard to the allegations that have been set forth that are to be investigated, the lack of confidence that persons have in the government as it relates to investigations, and I am going to say it, of illicit enrichment to involving members of parliament, which has never occurred before in our history of Jamaica. That the public needs to have confidence that there is going to be a thorough, fair investigation into what the allegations have been made out. And in these circumstances, you could have put anyone in that position. But the question is going to be asked of someone like Mr. Chung, who has publicly indicated his position as it regards to the report. as to whether or not there is public confidence in what he's going to do. That's one. And two, if you did not need qualifications of law enforcement, why would you have advertised them in 2024? And
Up
if
to
they were
November.
removed, why have you not been forthcoming to the public to say, we removed it? Because. And further, if you are so confident that he is the best of all applicants, because you'll agree with me that you can have 10 persons applying for Rhodes Scholars and their applications are extraordinary, but there's always one that stands out. Of all the applications in this particular moment, that he was the applicant for the time such as this, that was best suited to direct, to lead, and to present the image of transparency, objectivity, and public confidence in an entity that is now charged with investigating
Prime Minister.
the investigation report of the Prime Minister, whose overarching powers are so of such that they stretch to the extent that every single member of his political party will defend him. And there is none that is going to come out and say, it don't look good. I'm just saying. So it's not a question of whether he can do the job. It's a question of whether his appointment is going to inspire public confidence, given the fact that we are at a position that we have never experienced before.
Well, I mean, she said it. The whole subjectivity of his appointment, and the question is, will he be able to be objective in the dispensation of his duties as it relates to the Prime Minister's investigation? He's going to be, quote unquote, managing that particular arm of law enforcement. Qualifications aside, and I'm going to go there again, is public pronouncement on the happenings leading up to this point pertaining to the Prime Minister's statutory declaration would beg of the question, how would you adjudicate on the Prime Minister's case?
So how much weight, though, how much weight should endorsements from groups such as the PSOG and prominent lawyers, carry? That's one of the questions. Do they bolster trust, or, would they raise red flags?
I want you to notice something, that all the endorsements you would have gotten, they endorsed his qualifications. So as far as qualifications are concerned, as far as his abilities to manage an organization is concerned, he would have had the full confidence of those people. He was at the PSOJ, which he did a phenomenal job. I think I was there briefly with him. He was at several other places, including NIA.
Yes, yeah. And he was a fantastic board chair.
Exactly. So there's no doubt as to whether or not he has the ability to manage. But where the doubt is his ability to be objective in the dispensation of his duties pertaining to the live investigation of the Prime Minister's financials.
Look, it's all also about appearances,
Yeah.
Let's be reasonable. Nobody's questioning his qualifications. People are looking at his pronouncements. People are looking at the fact that he has an heir to the Prime Minister. And one of the things I think we are not asking ourselves, who does the FID director report to?
Good question.
Ministry of Finance?
Or the Commissioner and the Minister of National Security.
I'm just making a point here.
Yeah.
Hold up. Just walk with me down this road. Who does he report to? Does the Minister of Finance, does he have anything to do? Is there a channel of communication to the Ministry of Finance?
It would appear.
If there is a channel to the Ministry of Finance, who does the Ministry of Finance report to?
The Prime Minister.
PM.
All right. Let's shift it again. When you put someone in the position of FID chair, where we talk about investigations, is he someone that can generate confidence from the investigators who are going to be working with him in that particular position? Is his connection to the Minister of Finance and the Prime Minister of such that those who are doing investigations may become fearful of doing that which they're supposed to do or saying what they have to say in a meeting because they don't want a name to reach that particular location.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. And so when you talk about that, we have to be real and appreciate that people want confidence in the position. That's all they're asking for.
So we have understood from pronouncements here as well as other places that the role or the requirements rather, they have been changed. You know, as well, that was in November, late November, early December. Now, could we argue, or you think that there might be some argument in existence that states that the role was rightfully redefined, you know, to meet new demands?
What new demands, though? It's a law enforcement
That's for the Prime
agency.
Minister, and that's for them to answer, though.
What are the new demands? And let's be real, in the international community, just do, everybody will tell you, let's do a Google search.
Let's Google it.
Let's Google it. When you Google it and you
ChatGPT.
look to see what the qualifications are if you want to establish a strong foundation, the investigations come in. An attorney who has a particular background, investigations background, does it mean that any attorney can become director of public prosecutions?
No.
No.
They are qualified. Particularly an attorney who is in the courts, they do criminal matters, they've done so for the last 20 years. Are they qualified to become DPP? You might have 20 applications, but there's still one that stands out. And then you look at timing. Timing is everything.
So would it be proper to ask who were the other applicants and what caused them not to be chosen?
Well, if you're inspiring public trust,
Yeah.
you'd want to share who the applicants were. And if you're inspiring public trust, you want to say, when did you change it? Because you might have a good reason. And I'm happy you raised that. Because there may have been a good reason. There might have been several applications that have been put in and nobody came out. And so we reworked it. Going back to the past doesn't help us. And as Jamaicans, we have to accept that we don't drive looking into a rearview mirror.
Yeah.
We get where we're going by facing forward. So this constant decision of saying, we had 5 people who used to have that. People who used to use typewriter don't survive now if you don't know how to use a smartphone. Things and times change. So we must meet the challenges of our new reality. And so the question is, do these qualifications give confidence in our system? Do these qualifications give confidence to the Jamaican people in the context of which we are operating? Does this appointment strengthen the political view that there is, in fact, commitment to anti-corruption, commitment to ensuring that there are no parliamentarians who are even covered by the spectre of illicit enrichment? And will they be investigated? Remember, that's the problem that people are having with corruption, you know. Let me bring it home to what is close to NIA. Ask any Jamaican, what's your greatest problem with corruption in Jamaica? There has never been a politician who's been called to book. There's never been the capture of the big fish.
So then, following along your vein, then it seems to me that the impression that is being painted that when we when we don't put the right structures in place and then individuals go, then somehow the politicians are pretty much just creating new avenues to protect themselves.
Absolutely.
So that they will never ever be brought to
Well,
books.
you see, that's the problem that we're having with the current system and the current regime. We're asking the persons who are beneficiaries of the system
to fix it.
To fix it. And they're not going to fix it because they're the ones who benefit from the Westminster model.
Is there a better way, though, for us to get the system fixed without asking those who are at the head of the system to fix it? Is there a better way?
The best way is what we do now. You eat an elephant one bite at a time. Education, public education, because I'll tell you this much. The better way is for the public to start asking for greater accountability. And it's not just civil society. When people define civil society as JAMP or NIA, we are just remnants of civil society. There are several groups. The challenge is that many people are afraid to talk.
Or they don't know the right questions to ask.
Or them just afraid to talk, because they're afraid to ask. Asking questions means they have to talk. And they perhaps don't know where they can go to talk. And the information is not being presented to them. And the avenues where they can get this information is not there. But you see, once you start educating people about civics, when you start asking people to understand that as a politician, there are 7 things that you should know about: objectivity, transparency, integrity, and honesty. And start demanding this of your politicians and start allowing them to become accountable, whether it is at the ballot, or by making sure that as communities, we no longer just demonstrate, but we participate in putting forward petitions, clamoring for what we want and what we think is right. They have to answer. And they're not going to change the system, Kwame. It has to be coming from us as a people in the different groups, brownies, the groups that you represent, who become active.
So follow me now, both of us, both of you. What if, and this is just a big what if our politicians are but a microcosm of Jamaica, and what if we are afraid to hold them accountable because the possibility exists that we will now have to hold ourselves
That's not a what if. That is exactly what happens now. Because when you do and look at the Don Anderson poll that says over 90% of Jamaicans believe that corruption is a way of life. And we understand that we benefit from nepotism. How you get to work? I got call Donovan because he must know somebody down in one of them business space where I can get one lawyer work. Hold me true. Yes? Or cronyism. Me know Kwame down a CTV and me know say him go call me and tell me when them have a vacancy. Because we benefit from friends, we benefit from family, we benefit from hand go packy come.
Links.
Hand go packy come because we know something. All of us have that experience.
What if you're qualified?
Even if you're qualified.
Yeah, you still have to.
You still have to.
Yeah.
So you are perfectly right. How we start this change is for us to ask ourselves, are we satisfied with what is happening?
Or
and
am
I prepared to make that change? And I'm grateful you brought it up. Because less than an hour ago, that was the precise conversation I was having. I indicated that change will never come, Kwame, until as a people and as Jamaicans, we accept what we want to see. So if politicians, we perceive politicians to be corrupt, and we have no issues with politicians putting their friends in positions and politicians using their powers to get more assets, and we don't have a problem with that because scamming mentality is really large and in charge, then that's fine. That's the Jamaica that we want. And people like Danielle and Jeanette are just spitting in the air because people really don't want to change, because at the end of the day, you are right. They don't want to acknowledge that they are part of the problem. And I agree with you. So it's not a big what if. What happens now is, have we accepted that we are part of the problem and we're now willing to be the change? And if we're willing to be the change, we can't limit ourselves to how we're going to change it. We have to start changing it in our spaces and asking, because politicians represent us. They come from us, you know. I feel we family then come from, you know, them are my family, my friend, my family, my uncle, my cousin. All the way. Then I just grow up overnight. I know weed. So if you accept that they come from us and they represent us, it must be that they are talking about the things and the elements and the values that we hold true. If they are not people who are holding our values, why are you supporting them? Just asking for a friend.
For a friend. So Donovan, let me throw this one out to you. In the past, we have seen that the Andrew Holness administration has been defined as being poor communicators. You know, could this be one of those instances where A, they have not been able to communicate properly, or B, they have not communicated full stop, or C, they just can't bother? And so the changes have been made, and we're expected to just take it and just run with it.
Yeah, I think what has happened in the past is that a couple of things happened, and it wasn't checked. It was allowed to happen. So in this particular scenario, we are in election season. So both political parties are out there on the hustings. This particular issue with the Prime Minister's situation is seen as a weakness by the opposition. And the fact is, if the Prime Minister was in opposition, if they were in opposition and this happened, it would have been the same thing.
Yeah.
So it is pure politics at this point, right? But there is a teaching moment, I think. At the end of the day, a lot of questions are being asked, and people are demanding answers. And of course, there are going to be answers that are tainted by politics. And there are going to be the people, I would consider me one of the people who are centrists. I'm here, we need the thing to be run and run properly. If it's going to be done, it needs to look good.
Yeah.
And this particular matter, as far as the optics of it is concerned, it does not...
Leaves too much of a question.
Yeah, it leaves a lot to, it is questionable. So what I think at the end of the day is going to happen, and I don't think it's going to be a 9-day wonder, but I think post the election, I have to look, because the election is in the year, it's near.
Yeah, it's near.
There's not a lot that is going to happen outside of this. If the opposition is still in opposition after the election, they'll still be asking the questions about the Prime Minister's declarations and how the investigation is going at FID. If it is that the government changes hands, then of course we know what's going to happen. Right? So it's almost like musical chairs as far as the politics is concerned. But right now, with the current environment that we're in, you take a seat and get some popcorn.
You know, let me start by taking this. We're going into we're going into a break now, and I love the insights.
Yay.
You know, Danielle Arsha, thank you very much. You know, for your thoughtful contributions. So after the break, though, Dr. Nadine Spence joins us for another part of this particular conversation. Mr. Wignall will be staying. I look forward to speaking with you again.
Always a pleasure.
She has said a mouthful.
Always.
You know, and
Is there a box outside? Is there security? 'Cause
so,
it's nighttime, right?
yeah. So let me just turn to you and say,